Hey, it's David Bruce with Accelerated Banking. And today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up our calculator and I'm going to show you the math behind our strategies. And I think this is going to blow your mind. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do several different examples. I'm going to do one example, which is where we compare a traditional mortgage versus the first lien position HELOC, just like you're purchasing a new home. And that way, you would be able to avoid using the amortized mortgage, get into the simple interest calculation of the HELOC. And I'm going to show you with a rate comparison to where we're using the same rate for the mortgage and we're using the same rate for the HELOC. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you another example with that to where what happens with the interest rate changes on the HELOC, because a lot of these are adjustable rate products. Now, there are some fixed rate HELOCs, so don't panic when I say that, because what I'm going to show you here is that the interest rate is not the enemy. It's the balance and time that are the enemy. And then what I'm going to do is show you that, well, what if we run the numbers and this is a cash flow strategy. So what happens if I don't have enough cash flow to justify using the first lien strategy? I'm going to then look at what would it look like to use a second lien HELOC and be able to go about breaking down the amortization schedule on the first mortgage. That way, maybe you have a mortgage already and you could use a second lien strategy because you've got such a low interest rate on that fixed rate mortgage, or you're going to buy a home and you want to get a fixed rate first mortgage and use a home equity line of credit second for the strategy in order to break down that amortization schedule. So we've got several different examples I'm going to go through here for you today, and let's just jump right in. So you should be able to see the calculator. And what this is going to show us here is this is going to be a purchase scenario. So what we're assuming here is that we're going to be financing $400,000. I'm using an interest rate of 5.5%, which is currently at today's market rates that I'm doing this video. And we're going to do this on a 30-year term. And you notice it's automatically going to calculate the principal and interest payment of $2,271.16. Now, before we get down to the HELOC and start going through the rest of this numbers and how the HELOC is going to work, I want to show you the amortization schedule on that existing mortgage. So if you look at the amortization schedule, you'll notice I've got these separated in red and green columns for the breakdown of the monthly payment. Notice in this first months, the majority of that payment is going to interest, very little money going to principal. And if we go down here and we look down the schedule, even if we go down, say, of several years, which is down here to the 5-year mark at this point, you really would still be paying mostly interest at that point, and your balance really has not dropped that much from $400,000 down to $369,000. So I think it's important to have that as a foundation before we get into the HELOC, because what I'm going to show you here is going to change the way that interest is calculated all the way down to the daily level. So as I mentioned, this is a cash flow strategy. So the thing that we have to do next is, again, we're using $400,000. We're going to do a cash flow strategy. So what I need to do is I need to enter your income. So what we would do is we would have you go through your budget. You determine what is your net income. So what money can you bring home and deposit on an average monthly basis? And whether that's if you're a W-2 and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, or you get paid bi-weekly, you would calculate what monies you have available and that you can deposit. If you are self-employed, you really want to look at that as far as an average that you're able to bring home, because you may have one really big month and then a down month and then a big month and a down month. So you want to average that out, because this calculator is wanting to look at money coming in and going back out on a monthly basis. So the next thing that we need to do here in this column is we need to use the living expenses. And when we talk about living expenses, remember, being a cash flow strategy, this is about every dollar that comes into your budget each month and every dollar that goes back out of your budget as an expense. So what we're looking for here is everything other than your mortgage payment, because the mortgage payment is going to be already in the calculations that are being done here with the calculator. So what I'm looking for this number is everything else. That's the food, the gas, the groceries, the utilities, gas for the car insurance, vacations, Christmas, and then anything that you just spend money on a monthly basis. And then anything that you have, like your property taxes, that needs to be in there. Your homeowner's insurance needs to be in there. If you live in a homeowners association, that needs to be in there. So anything that you're paying on an annual basis, you want to divide that out by 12 and break it down so that we can put in your expenses on a monthly basis. So in this case, this is an example of one of our clients. I took it directly from an intake form for one of our clients. So The net monthly income we used is $13,648, and the living expenses were $8,432. Now we did this, and again, that $8,432 includes the monies for the taxes and insurance and the homeowners association, because that has to be part of the calculation. So what we're doing here is in the new line of credit information, what we're saying is that we're going to do $400,000 as a first lien position HELOC. We're going to do this at a 5.5% interest rate. And at this point, we aren't going to have any annual rate increase in here yet. Now, I will go back and change that and show you something that you'll find quite interesting. But for right now, we're going to start it at 5.5%, treat it as a fixed. That way the rate's not changing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and look at the results. Now, under the results, this calculation comes out at 7.7 years for the payoff. And the reason that we have number of days here is because we want you to start thinking about your cash flow all the way down to the daily level, because interest gets charged daily, and we have to change the way that interest is charged on a daily level. So that's one of the things that's going to help drive the strategy, is we're going to use cash flow strategies to change the way that interest is calculated all the way down to the daily level. Now look at the results here. On that original mortgage at $400,000 at 5.5%, if you kept that loan for the full 30 years, you would have to pay back $417,616. Now, with our cash flow strategy, because we're going to now get this house paid off in 7.7 years, the interest dropped all the way down to $92,824 for a savings of $324,000. Now, I don't know about you, but I would much rather pay $92,000 to pay off my home than $417,000, because that $324,000 that we save this way is money that's going to be able to be used to educate your children, plan on retirement, to invest in other real estate or income producing assets, to be able to start or grow a business, to have money for emergencies. It's just going to give you that foundation, because these are the dollars that you're going to not have to pay as interest. That's going to allow you to be able to accomplish your financial goals. Now, the next thing that I've got here is the TIP, the total interest percentage. This is actually the most important number in consumer finance, but most people don't think about it because everybody pretty much knows their interest rate. If I asked anybody watching this video today, what's your interest rate on your mortgage? And you probably know that. But if I ask you what your TIP percentage is, you probably say, I'm not even sure what the TIP stands for, and I just don't know what it is. But it's actually the most important number. And this is the number that we need to be paying attention to. It's the yardstick that we want to measure by, because it's the total cost of borrowing, the total interest you're going to pay over that life of that loan. So notice here, remember, I said you're going to borrow $400,000, but you got to pay back $417,616 over the life of that loan if you keep it for the full 30 years. That means you're paying back 104% of what you borrowed, more than what you borrowed. So you're buying one house for you, and you're buying one house for the bank. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem fair to me. And I'm not going to agree to that. And I want to help you not have to do that. So the next thing that we're looking at here is look at what it did. By changing the cash flow strategy, by paying off in 7.7 years, by saving $324,000 of interest, you reduced your TIP all the way from 104% down to 23%, so an 81% savings. Now, here's something that's also really important to understand, and this is the next portion here, and that is the effective interest rate. Because remember, if you're effectively paying down the balance faster and avoiding interest, which the heart of the strategy is interest avoidance, then doesn't it make sense that by doing that, you're going to be lowering your effective interest rate? So if you had a 5.5% rate and you lowered that by 81%, that means you would have an effective interest rate of 1.03%. So, we know that rates went up. And if you have this 5.5% on your mortgage, you're probably pretty upset about it. You're like, I wish I would have bought sooner. I can't believe I didn't get those historically low rates, but that's okay, because we know how to break those rates. We know how to break that amortization cycle, and we know how to reduce our TIP, and we know how to reduce our effective interest rate so that you can fight for those dollars. Now, these are the results, okay? This is the results that we're showing you. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you how the money works, because this is what you want to see. So here we are. We're at day one. You're starting the balance at $400,000. You're depositing that first paycheck. And here in this case, I'm making the assumption that you're depositing money on the 1st and the 15th. So that way you're getting paid twice a month, and half of your income goes in on the 1st and half of the income goes in on the 15th. So when you start with $400,000 balance and you deposit your income, now your balance is lower. Now, throughout the month, your balance is going to stay lower so that you're paying less interest each day. Then you turn around and you deposit your paycheck on the 15th. And now, if you'll notice, your balance is lower. So then you go back down until the end of the month. Now it's time to pay some bills around the end of the month. So then you pay your living expenses. Well, when you pay your living expenses, what's going to happen? It's going to raise your balance. So when you deposit money, you reduce your balance. When you spend money, it increases the balance. But what matters here is that you're depositing more money than you spend each month. You're treating this as your checking and savings account, because this HELOC is going to have a checkbook, a debit card, online bill pay, online banking. You're going to have all the functionality of a checking or savings account. But what you're doing is you're telling Mr. Banker, I no longer am going to give you free loans in your checking or savings accounts. I'm going to use my money every day to get my balance as low as possible each night so that I can pay you the least amount of interest on a daily basis so that my money can be used to pay down my debt faster. So that's what the strategy is going to do. So then as we go, if we come down here, and I'm just going to scroll down, and remember, each one of these are a day because we're talking daily level at this point. So I'm going to go down to the end of the first year. Let's see, day 365 is right here. So 366, at the end of the first year, you've paid your balance down to $356,706. Now, the important thing to understand is that this also is a line of credit. So you can take money back out of it, which means that you paid down your balance $43,293. So that's money that's now available. That's money that you can draw back out for your use however you need to see fit. You don't have to ask permission. You use your credit card, you write a check, you transfer money. It's available to you. And that's part of the great part of this is you're not trapping your equity as you're in the process of paying down the balance. So that's the first year. Then we come down, and let's go down to year number 2. And here we are, year number 2, $313,080. Notice how the daily interest is getting less. Notice how your balance is getting less. But let's just do a comparison real quick. Let's go back to this amortization schedule and say, well, where would I be at the end of 2 years if I just did my mortgage? And at the end of your 2 years on the mortgage would be 9 of 24. Your balance would be $388,430. So for $388,430 with a mortgage, or $313,080 with the HELOC. So just after 2 years, see the difference, see how quick this is going to go. So that's important to understand. Now that's a repetitive process. And as you notice, as I scroll down here in this interest column, as the balance gets lower, so does the interest. And then let me just scroll a little faster. And in this case, you start seeing the balance go down rapidly. Notice here we are, the interest keeps getting less and less, and you're heading towards payoff. So this is the math behind the first lien position calculation. Now, that's example number 1. So now what I want to do is I'm going to talk about example number 2, because this made the assumption that, let's just say that 5.5% rate was fixed for the first 5 years. But after 5 years, it's going to adjust. But now let's just say, okay, let's assume that we don't get an adjustable rate, that it's going to start adjusting immediately. Or not immediately, but it's going to start adjusting or has the potential to adjust each year. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say, what if we even do a 1% increase? And what does that do to our payoff? So again, let's just look at the results real quick before I do that. 7.7 years at 5.5% with no rate increase. And if we have a 1% rate increase, that moves your payoff to 8.7 years. Now, remember, that increase is going to cost you a little bit more interest, and it is going to make your payoff a little longer. But we're comparing this to 30 years. So 8.7 years versus 30 years is still a major victory, because still look at the savings. You're still saving $265,975. You still reduced your tip all the way from 104% down to 38%, and you have an effective interest rate of 1.843%. So even if the rate increases 1% per year, now, remember, we said this is over 8 years. So that means it started at 5.5, and then it went to 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5, 11.5, 12.5, 13.5. So that makes the assumption that it would go all the way to 13.5% during the life of that HELOC, and you would still pay off that fast. And the reason that I say that is because, number one, we know we are in an increasing rate environment, and they have raised rates recently, and they are going to raise rates some more, but they're going to hit a wall. They just can't keep raising rates year after year after year after year. So it's really an over assumption. It's very conservative assumption that the rate would go up 1% each year. But I wanted to show you that because it's important to understand that when the rate doesn't go up 1% per year, every year, then you're going to be able to pay off even faster. So I think that's a really good expectation. Now, the next thing that I want to show is what happens if you don't have this kind of cash flow. Maybe you don't have quite as much income, or you've got more expenses and the payoff isn't quite so good. So now let's just say your expenses are $11,000 and the income, or assume the income stays the same, but your expenses are $11,000. And notice here that we get into the column that says, or the result that says never. And what that means is that this actually, in that scenario, that the balance is the enemy. And because this is a cash flow strategy, with these numbers of $13,648 coming in and $11,000 going back out each month, that this actually would be worse than your mortgage. So if we run the scenario that way, we would say, nope, you're not qualified. That's not something we would recommend. Unfortunately, this isn't going to work for you. Now, I wish I could tell you that this is going to work for everyone, but it doesn't. So the next thing that I want to do is say, okay, well, we ran the numbers that way, and luckily your numbers are better than that. And we didn't get a never response. So let's say your expenses were $9,500. Let's see what that looks like. So at $9,500, we have a payoff of 14.3 years. So now that's pretty good. I mean, 14.3 years is a good payoff because, again, remember, we're comparing that to 30 years. So you're paying off in half the time. You didn't do a 15-year amortized mortgage and make that commitment to having to make that larger payment every month and getting your money trapped in that mortgage along the way as you are paying down the balance. So in this case, I'm going to tell you at 14.3 years, I would not recommend the first lien strategy. And here's why. You could do better. And what I mean by that is the next example, the next scenario that we're going to run. So instead of doing that with a payoff of 14.3 years, what I would say is let's look at our second lien strategy and see how much better that would be. So with the second lien strategy, what it's going to allow you to do is get the lowest fixed rate you can on your mortgage and then use our second lien chunking method in order to break down the amortization schedule and be able to save money that way. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to say, all right, we're going to do instead of a $400,000, which is the first lien, we're going to just do chunks of, say, $20,000. So we're going to do a $20,000 draw. We're going to deposit it towards the mortgage. And I'm still going to leave this 5.5% and the 1%. But notice this way, instead of trying to do all of it under one balance at one higher interest rate, and a rate that could be changing on the largest portion of your balance, let's protect that balance. Let's keep it in the mortgage. Let's get that fixed rate. And then let's use the second strategy, the second lien, in $20,000 chunks in order to break it down and make extra payments to the first mortgage and break down that amortization cycle. And look at the results here. Now the payoff is down to 10.5 years. So that's 4 years better by using a second lien strategy than the first lien strategy. Now, here's the thing. The math is going to change on this for everybody. Everybody's different. The size of the chunks, the amount of income and expenses you have. So this is why you really need to be able to use this calculator and have one of our consultants make sure that we're using the right numbers and be able to that way we're projecting that you're going to get the right results. So here at the 10.5 years, we're saving $287,000. We dropped our tip from 104% down to 33%. And we've dropped our effective interest rate all the way down to we dropped our effective interest rate all the way down to 1.546%. So again, there's more than one way to do this, but what I wanted to do was show you some of the math. So I'm going to show you one more level of math, and that is I'm going to show you what's going on here. And this is going to be a little more complicated. So I don't expect everybody to get this right away. And I'm going to go a little bit slow, but I'm going to let you know that this is the kind of stuff that we're really going to make sure you understand whenever you do a consultation with us. But I'm going to show you the behind the scenes. So here we are. Let me get back to the top. We are getting started with this. You've got your $400,000 mortgage. You've got the payment coming up, and the payment's already been calculated. And it's showing the breakdown of the principal and interest whenever you have to make the payment at the end of the first month. And then we're going to start implementing the cash flow strategies right away. So we start with your mortgage balance, and your mortgage is going to just be paid off is right now going to be paid. So what we're going to do is we're going to say $400,000 mortgage balance. We deposited our income because we're starting to use the strategy. And then we took a $20,000 draw from the second lien HELOC and made a $20,000 principal payment to the first mortgage. So notice here how the balance now is dropped by $20,000. That's because we created a $20,000 balance in the line of credit. So 20,000 minus your deposit equals the balance. Now notice how this daily interest is minimal, very low interest, not much at all. And then look what happens whenever your second paycheck hits in the month. So your first paycheck on the 1st, the other paycheck on the 15th, your balance started the month at 20,000. And then it's in the middle of the month, it's all the way down to $6,352. Well, we do have to pay bills. So at the end of the month, you're going to turn around and pay all of your bills. And then that means your balance is going to go back up. But then we're going to repeat that process. We're going to deposit the income. We're going to change the way that interest is calculated by getting this balance as low as we can each night. We're going to deposit the next income. Look at where the balance goes. Then we're going to pay some bills. Then we're going to repeat this process. And what we want to look for, and we're going to see here, is how long does it take before you're able to do the next chunk. So I'm going to go down here, and it took 137 days to be able to pay down that $20,000 balance that you used as a chunk. So 137 divided by 30, that's 4.5 months. So at 4.5 months, you've made a $20,000 chunk, and now you've turned around and it's time to do that next $20,000 chunk. So notice here at the beginning of the month, your balance was 377. You do another chunk for 20,000. Now your balance is down to 357. And then you repeat the process. Again, income goes in, daily balance determines your daily interest. You deposit more money than you spend each month. And at the end of the month, your balance is lower. So then as we go through here, we see that as we scroll down, and I'm going to go quite a ways down here because this is a 10-year payoff calculation, but look at what it looks like down here towards the end. When you start getting the balance, let's just say here, let's go to where the balance is about. Where did it go? Let's go down here to where the balance is about 50,000. All right, so here's an example. Day 3,318, and the balance is down to 47,952. At that point, look how little interest you're paying. You've already knocked out all these years worth of interest because now you've paid down the balance on the mortgage, and everything has really been working in your favor. You've been using the strategy, you're paying it down. But at this point, you notice that you are making more. You have hit the point that you're making more principal than interest on your normal payment, and you're turning around and having very little interest on that second lien HELOC portion that you're using for the chunking method. So I hope this gives you some insight as to the multiple ways that we can use our cash flow strategies. And what I want to do is, what I'm going to recommend is, number one, I'm going to give you the ability to get a copy of this calculator. So click on the link below. It's going to let you register and get a copy of this calculator. Now, it's not going to have this daily tab that shows you our secret sauce, the math behind this, behind the true math behind it. But you will be able to put in your loan amount. You'll be able to put in your income and expenses. You'll be able to make some interest rate assumptions, and you'll be able to run the numbers and see your results. Then what I want you to do is, at that point, you would have already got your budget together in order to put the accurate numbers into the calculator. So at that point, what I want you to do is, we have a webinar that I'd like you to watch, which gives you some more information and background on how the strategy works. And then we offer a free consultation. And that's really where we're going to really be able to say, okay, if you've used the calculator, let's make sure that you used it properly. Let's give us a chance to double check the results, make sure that we can help you get qualified to get the right tool and determine which of these strategies is going to be best for you, whether it's a first lien, a second lien, or we also have a HELOC strategy. So one of the things that you could do is, even if you just bought a house and you say you're a veteran and you just bought a house and you don't have any equity because you used 100% financing, we have a personal line of credit strategy that you could maybe use with a $15,000 line of credit that's not tied to your house, and be able to break down the amortization that way. So we have solutions for you, whether you're using this to buy a home, whether you already own a home, whether you have equity or don't have equity. So click on the button below, get a copy of the calculator. Then the next step is to watch the webinar. And after that, schedule your consultation. And we're looking forward to helping you on your path to debt-free home ownership. Hopefully, this is helpful and gives you a better idea. So we'll see you on the other side. Take care.